Welcome to Unapologetically ADHD. I'm Patricia Young, MSW, and I'm an ADHD former therapist and current coach.
I'm Alex McLaughlin, MSW and LICSW, and I'm an ADHD therapist. This is a podcast with two friends processing what it's like to live in body minds that diverge from neuronormative standards and everything that comes with it, the good, the bad, and the beautifully messy.
We aim to release 2 or more episodes per month. This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for help from a licensed mental health practitioner. Hey there, how are ya? Today, Alex and I are going to take some time and introduce ourselves so that you know a little bit about us, about when we were diagnosed, what diagnoses we have, what we noticed before diagnosis, after diagnosis. We're not sure how long this episode is going to take, so if we have extra time, we'll tell you a little bit about how we met and our friendship. But we're just going to jump right in. And Alex, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about when you were diagnosed, what you noticed before you knew you were autistic, whatever you'd like to share.
Sure. If it's okay, I'll probably start with when I first suspected.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point in time, I was a school social worker and I was working with autistic folks. And I don't remember the specifics, but just the way in which some of my autistic students would, move through the world, the way they thought about things, the way they just experienced the world, I thought I relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time asking a few friends that were special education teachers, I remember saying, I think I might be autistic. And one of them was like, no, I don't think so. You don't seem to fit the profile that I have in my brain. And so I just kind of wrote it off because I'm like, well, they would know. They work, with this population. They would know. So it's probably not what's going on for me. And then several years down the road, I was in group therapy and someone in my group was talking about how they suspected they were autistic. They were also assigned female at birth, AFAB, and just the way they were talking about it and how they mentioned when they worked in an industry where they had to engage in small talk with their customers or clients. Not sure what they called them, and they just talked about how they would get so anxious beforehand and never knew what to say and just felt really awkward and that whole experience. And I'm like, I relate to that too. There's something here. And then they, just kind of were sharing about their diagnosis journey. And I started to be like, wait a minute. All the things you're saying, I very much relate to. And I learned more about high masking autism at that point in time. And I took a few of the online tests. I think I took the RADS-R. I scored clinically significant, significantly above the cutoff. I don't remember what my original score was, but it was high. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe everyone else just experiences these things. And I should backtrack and say the RADS-R, for those that don't know, is, I forget the acronym, but it's a self-assessment that folks can take. It's available online at Embrace Autism. I don't know if it's .com or .org. We'll find that.
I think it's .org. We'll put it in the show notes.
But it can be also a diagnostic tool that professionals use. I know we use it to support diagnosis. So it's a self-assessment. And I think I also took the CAT-Q, which is a camouflaging questionnaire. Same thing available on that same website. And I scored, high, significant in the clinically significant range. And so I got assessed and I went to a place that the person, I'm so thankful for the person in group because they helped me see that I was autistic, and they also were doing a lot of the research to find clinics that were going to be affirming and that were skilled at assessing high masking or non-stereotypically presenting. And so, yeah, I got in, got assessed, got diagnosed, and I cried. I actually, I was sad. I don't know, I think I was shocked, but also not at the same time.
When you got the diagnosis?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was like, are you sure? Kind of in disbelief. And I think I just want to normalize this. I don't want people to say, hear me say there was grief there and think that, right, autism is something bad, right? And those are beliefs that we're told by the world around us. And so there was grief there. There was a sense of, okay, well, if there's these things about me that I can't really change that make life really hard, there is going to be grief there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I feel like that next year just kind of really deep dove into researching, understanding autism, understanding high masking autism or non-stereotypically presenting. And I mean, there was a whole emotional journey. There was, right, grief. There was also excitement, acceptance. I finally felt like I had answers because for so long I had just been told, oh, you're just so anxious. You're so anxious. And yeah, I have anxiety. And that's not the whole picture. And I think I was trying to quote unquote fix my mental health with things that just weren't catching. I feel like there was something I was missing. And so getting diagnosed really helped me be okay, actually, no, I have trauma. And so I'm going to have mental health challenges and that's not, but that didn't explain all of it. And so once I started learning more and accommodating myself, allowing myself to show up more authentically and unmasking, life got so much easier. Not to say that there aren't challenges, right? There are. And I think OCD was kind of showing up to try and figure it out. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD right away. I was assessed for ADHD 3 times. The first one was, I don't know, probably 10 years ago at this point in time. And I was diagnosed with autism, I want to say almost 4 years ago now. And I'm in my late 30s, my mid to late 30s. And so it was later in life. Yeah, but so my first time I got assessed for ADHD, the person's your interview would indicate that you have ADHD, but your computer test scores don't indicate it because you were able to click on the appropriate things when you needed to. And people with ADHD just can't do that. Right?
Yeah, I'm shaking my head. Yeah.
Right. It's cool, but I'm compensating. I'm working so hard to keep my attention on the thing and to tell myself when to click. I'm working really hard to make this happen. And then when I got the autism assessment, I also got assessed for ADHD. And on the computer test this time, I scored within the range of ADHD, but the interview that we did with one of my parents, the assessor said that there wasn't enough evidence in childhood. That parent probably has ADHD and doesn't have the best memory. And so I think there was not a lot that parent reported. I think I masked it really well up until college and high school and college. And I think my hyperactivity at that time, growing up, was very mental, very internal. I don't think people would have noticed. Now my hyperactivity, I think people can notice. It's not just mental. Right. And the inattentiveness, you don't notice. You might not notice. I do remember teachers telling me and my parents that they thought I might have ADHD in middle school. And I think my parents just had a a limited understanding of what that might be, what that might look like. So they kind of didn't explore it any further. So I got diagnosed with ADHD about a year later after my autism diagnosis. Maybe it was 2 years later. And what's funny is I was with a psychiatrist at the time, and we were in session, and she just kind of made an offhanded comment about, oh yeah, you're ADHD. And I was like, wait, what? I don't have ADHD. She was like, oh, I thought you did. I was like, I mean, I do think I do, but I've never been diagnosed. She was like, oh, I mean, you fit all the like signs. I think she said symptoms. She's like, you fit all the symptoms. I'm like, yeah, I think so too. So then I explored it again and yeah, was diagnosed. I want to take a pause here because that was a lot of info without a break. So I'm going to just pause and see if there's, questions or other things I could add at this point. Or
if you look back in your childhood, knowing now what you know about autism and ADHD, what things do you connect now that you may not have? And before you answer that, I also want to include, I believe that after we get diagnosed, there's this cycle of, and it can come in any order, of relief, validation, joy, grief, rage, sadness, guilt, and rinse and repeat. I think that's just very, very common. And if you ask me what is the correct response when somebody tells you that they got an autism diagnosis or an ADHD diagnosis, I believe the correct response is congratulations. What do you think, Alex?
I think so too. I mean, I think I had one family member I told, they were like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, why are you apologizing?
Mm-hmm.
They were like, and they were honest. They were like, I don't know what to say to that information.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's fair. Like, thank
Yeah.
you for being transparent. But I think I'm sorry, right, indicates, oh, this is bad. That's bad news. And for the most part, like, my family responded. I know you didn't ask that question, but that's on my notes to talk on. But for the most part, my family and friends responded like really with openness and receptivity and understanding and wanting to like support me. I think it took a little bit of time for some folks to truly understand what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, I had a limited understanding of what it meant. And so
Sure.
to answer your question, looking back, I think I would like say and do things that friends would be like, Alex, you can't say that. You can't do that. Like, that's not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just be like, but why? That's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know it's not appropriate? And they would just kind of be like, because it's not. And I'm like, okay, but like, who makes these rules?
Mm-hmm.
I just felt very, I mean, I think I was picked on, and I think I would get picked on for being weird and different and awkward. I remember being very shy and like not knowing what to say in situations. I was actually like looking back at childhood photos, and I have like my fingers in my mouth and I'm like chewing on my fingers. And I used to like cheek chew, not used to, I still do this, cheek chew and like lip bite and tongue bite. And I think that was my way of stimming and fidgeting so that no one would know that I was doing it. I remember in church, I would count the ceiling tiles. That's how I would keep my brain occupied. I remember I would have to reread text, any text really, because I couldn't sustain my attention and be like, I don't remember the last page I just read. So I'd have to reread it. And sometimes I would have to write really detailed notes that were essentially like repeating the text verbatim, but that was the only way I was going to retain the information because my working memory could not keep that all there. I think those were some of the signs. I think there's probably more, but that's what's coming to mind.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to keep sharing?
I feel like I've kind of downloaded what is forefront, but I mean, is there more that might be helpful to speak on or questions that you have?
I can't think of anything right now, but if I do, we can talk about it.
Okay. What was your journey like?
Well, I learned about being a highly sensitive person in 2018, and it resonated with me. And I decided to start a podcast called Unapologetically Sensitive and really did a deep dive into highly sensitive people or HSP. And I remember being in a Facebook group for neurodivergent folks, and somebody said, HSP is just ableist for autism. And I, I was very upset about that. I was deeply offended. And I remember constantly looking for articles because I wanted to know definitively how do we decipher between HSP and autism, because I clearly was not autistic. Clearly.
I'm curious what made you say that or think that.
Think what?
That you're not autistic.
At that point, I don't think I knew enough about autism to really understand, and I had a very stereotypical view. I also really strongly believe that most of the representations that we see of autism stereotypically are very externalized versions. And Rain Man, and I always feel concerned giving these examples, but I don't know how to talk about it without. So if you need to correct me, Alex, you have my permission. But we think about rocking or very disruptive behavior or hand flapping or not speaking clearly or non-speaking. I think that there's an internalized presentation, and this is why we have so many people that are late identified and late diagnosed, because we tend to be internalizers. And that's where you're talking about the cheek biting. And I'm the same way that since I've been diagnosed, I allow myself to stim more, but I still mask a lot. And I have a lot of very stealth ways of stimming and an awful lot of masking. And those of us that are very high internalizers, also, if you have trauma, I was a big people pleaser. My symptoms went undiagnosed because there were other things to be looking at. I think that that's a pretty significant factor in why many people assign female at birth, not all. And we have some people that are assigned male at birth too, did not get the diagnosis because they did not have that stereotypical presentation.
Yeah, and I think like folks of color.
Absolutely.
You know, people of the global majority, like they, right, are going to present differently too, because like what's culturally, because it can be culturally not based, but they're right. I think there's different cultural norms around how someone presents. And also if someone's, you know, in a body that's highly politicized, they're going to have to mask even more for their own safety and survival. And so, yeah, I think that's a group, and genderqueer too. Like that's a group of folks that just don't present kind of like you're saying, the stereotypical like Rain Man, or even like, what's that person's name from Big Bang Theory? Sheldon. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to name that, but continue on.
Well, and I would say even a lot of the kids in the juvenile justice system, I can't remember what the statistics that I saw, but even inmates, how many undiagnosed autistics, and the diagnosis of oppositional defiant disorder may just be pathological demand avoidance. We don't like that term, but that's what popped in my head first, or pervasive or persistent drive for autonomy. And we can talk about those more in depth in later episodes, unless you feel it's important to address that now. But I think that there's so much inequity in our system around getting a clear diagnosis, whether it's self-identification or a formal diagnosis. I was a precocious kid. I was an old soul. I remember my mom saying I should be a lawyer because I like to argue. I think it's because I'm very pedantic. I probably always have been. And if you're autistic, pedantic has a very negative connotation, but I say that with a lot of pride, because accuracy and things being correct, not being right, but correct, can be a very important value for those of us that are autistic. I had a boss at one time who was Persian. He always says, "You talk like a book." I have no idea what that meant. But when I went to get an autism evaluation, I really had a hard time seeing stereotypical things in my childhood that appeared to be autistic. I suspect that my mom is autistic. I think we have a very similar presentation. So there were probably a lot of protective factors in there, because when you grow up with a parent or in a neurodivergent household, you just think that that's what's normal because everybody's like that. I also really struggled. I had some trauma at a young age, and really what I thought was disordered eating, I think now was stimming, using food to self-regulate. I have a diagnosis of OCD that's more recent, but I can see how all of that got turned into focusing on weight and food and diet. And I can remember compulsively making lists of, if I lose this much by this time, I'll weigh this much. And I see this in one of my adult sons. And it's often around saving money. If I put away this much money, I'll have this much by this time. And I can remember counting tiles. I liked in catalogs to count how many things I would get. How many people do I see with a certain color glasses or with shoes that were a certain color? Doing those things to try and ease my anxiety. And I felt very anxious as a kid. I remember our house had been broken into, and I remember lying under the covers at night and practicing not breathing in case somebody broke into the house so they wouldn't see us. They wouldn't see me. I worried about if I didn't fall asleep, I'd count how many hours until I had to get up because I was afraid I wouldn't get enough sleep. I had stomach aches all the time. I would hide from the school camp bus that would pick me up because I wanted to stay home and eat. I'd steal money from my mom's purse to sneak to the store because she only had healthy food in the house and I really love sweets. So I see all of these things, but developmentally I hit my milestones. I think I started reading at 3 and I love to read. And I think that's one of the things that probably saved me. And in elementary school, I was asked to not bring books to school because all I wanted to do was read. I'd always do the work that I liked and then the other stuff. And even in elementary school, I would sneak off the campus to leave early. And I went to a school that was 2 city buses away from where I lived. And I'd go across the campus of UCLA to the vending machines to look for spare change to buy stuff in the vending machines. I think about, my twin boys who are grown now, never spent a night alone and never did any of the things that I did. When I was 15, my mom left for 3 weeks to go to Georgia with her boyfriend to pick up his son, and she left me alone at home for 3 weeks. And when I've talked to her about it, she's like, you were a responsible kid. I know you wouldn't do anything. And I wouldn't. I was a well-behaved kid. I followed the rules. So much of my focus was around weight and this concept of having an eating disorder that I think it just mirrored. And when I went into treatment for almost a year, when I was 30, I went into residential treatment. They wanted me to see a therapist and they diagnosed me with depression. And I went out on disability 2 or 3 times in my working career when I was working for someone else. And in retrospect, I'm sure it was autistic burnout. But kind of pulling us a little bit more forward, I learned about the trait of being an HSP. I did not see myself as being autistic. And probably around 2020 when COVID started, I got on TikTok, which I love. And when I started to see what the lived experience of autism looks like, especially in AFABs, it resonated so much. And I started to suspect that I was autistic. And I went to Embrace Autism and I do a couple tests because I thought, well, what if I, fill one out and I'm not? And what does that mean? And of course, everything that I filled out indicated I was in the clinical area for autism, except for their PDA assessment. And I do have a PDA profile. So I self-identified for a while, but I still wasn't sure. I felt like I had imposter syndrome. I just wasn't sure. I always had very big feelings. I would get very upset about things. I think it's better now. It would take me a long time to get over things. Very strong sense of justice. I think too, because my theme and I was raised to feel very competent, I was really good at things, the things that I could do, but if I wasn't good at them, I just didn't do them. So I felt very competent, but also didn't engage in a lot of things because I couldn't do it well. I didn't do it. So I decided at age 60 to seek a diagnosis. And I remember her asking, what if you don't get the diagnosis? And I remember saying that then I failed to show you that I really think I am autistic. And I have had thoughts like, did she feel manipulated? Did she just give me a diagnosis because I said that? I think that imposter syndrome just keeps coming up for us. I did get a diagnosis of autism. When my twins were about 6, they saw a psychiatrist who diagnosed them both with ADHD, and the psychiatrist said that I had ADHD. And I remember crying a lot and just feeling overwhelmed. And then when I thought I was an HSP, I thought he didn't even know what he was doing. And then after I got diagnosed with autism, I went back to see him because I wanted to get on some meds. He didn't remember who I was, and he really didn't understand autism and asked me a lot of questions. I did end up seeing another psychiatrist who's been really helpful. And I had questioned the ADHD diagnosis, and she said, yeah, you've got ADHD. But there have been times in my life where I feel like the autism has been stronger or the ADHD has been stronger. So I think I still question often. I mean, I know that I'm autistic. I know I'm ADHD. I think it's very common for us to question, to still have those doubts.
Yeah, I think it is. I still question the ADHD all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then I remember, like, while I was exploring an ADHD diagnosis for the third time,
Mm-hmm.
I had a moment where I was putting on mascara. I walked into another room because I was like, oh, I need to put on deodorant. So I had my mascara wand in one hand, deodorant in another. And then I think I also like had put on half of my clothes. And I'm like, this is so classic. Like, this is like starting multiple tasks and not finishing any of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're like the going from room to room, cleaning, but being in one room, thinking of something in another room, going there, getting distracted by whatever's there, you know, like so classic. Yeah. And I had so many people in college and grad school be like, Alex, I think you might have ADHD. And I was like, no, it's just anxiety, because that's what I was told. Yeah. There are some things that you were talking about that just made me think of other things within my journey. And also just you were mentioning reading a lot, which is really common, hyperlexia, which is I think a high level, maybe I need to look it up before I speak on it, but my understanding is it's like a high level reading skill and someone that like reads a lot, right? And I think we could even do a whole episode on the like twice exceptional, quote unquote. I know there's like some back and forth in the community around some of the language we use with like gifted, quote unquote. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like that could be like part of your, or was part of your journey too.
Yeah, I suspect too that for some of us, because we struggle with executive function, we find ways to manage, and it makes us appear very competent. And I remember when I worked for the county, I worked in adoptions and we needed to do court reports. And because I had to show statistics about how many times a parent did a supervised visit or didn't do a supervised visit, and the numbers didn't make sense to me, I would make graphs and charts and come up with percentages because I love numbers and data, but I needed it to make sense to me. And the attorneys loved my court reports because I was able to quantify what the progress looked like. And that came as a result of me not understanding how to report just basic information or having lots of systems for things. I don't like losing things. It's so funny. Our dog lost a toy that she uses and we can't find it. And we have another one for her, but it was her favorite. And I'm perseverate. I'm like, where is that? Like, what happened to it? Where did it go? Because I do not like losing things. And even when I can replace something, it's not about the thing, but it's about what happened to it. Where is that process? And I can really, for weeks, really wonder about that.
Literally spent 2 hours yesterday looking for a piece of paper. And it still bothers me today. Like, where is it? I like turned my house upside down, looked in like inside of my car. Yeah, I need to close that loop. And if it's lost, that loop can't be closed.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to say? Anything else that you want to say about your journey?
I think so. One of the things that I have never known what I wanted to do in my life. I just seemed like things fall in my lap and I've never been very driven. And when I graduated from high school, nobody talked about college. So I went to community college. I started taking sign language because it was interesting and I became a sign language interpreter and did that for about 14 years. It took me about 14, 15 years to get a bachelor's degree because I got married and divorced and got 2 AA degrees and couldn't figure out what I was doing. Somebody said, I think you'd like social work. So I'm like, okay. And I became a social worker. And then I worked for the county full time. I graduated in 98, had supervision to become a licensed clinical social worker. And I struggle with paperwork. I did not submit the paperwork. So when I left the county in 2000, I was not licensed. And it took me until 2006 to get licensed because I took some time off when I had kids, and then I had to pay privately for supervision. I failed. I can't remember if I took 2 licensing exams, but I failed the first time. I had to take it a second time. So I graduated in 98. So in 2006, I finally got licensed. And that is because of struggling with paperwork. It was so cute. One of my sons was 6 and they knew I was taking the test that day. And when I picked him up, he asked me if I won the test. Which I thought was cute. Adorable. I bring this up because it's very common that we have very unrelated careers where it takes us a little bit longer to figure out what it is that we want to do. We may not have a clear path. We may have switched paths and feel like there's something wrong with us because that's just kind of how we're wired.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And the paperwork thing reminds me of when I had to get my clinical license. So for those that don't know, in social work, you have a base, at least I think this is true across the states. We just call it different things, but there's a license for people that are bachelor's level. Then there's a license for people that are master's level. And then there's a clinical license. And for the clinical license, the requirements vary from state to state, but on Wapakoti land, colonized as Minnesota, I believe it's 2,000 hours of supervision. And then you have to take a test. And the original test you have to take a different test. So then the second test you take. Anyways, long story short, I was eligible to apply for my clinical license much sooner. And I just didn't fully read the directions that I needed to submit verifications continuously every 2 years when I had to renew. And so by the time I was ready to apply, I submitted all my verification because I just thought you did it at the end. And then I had to request an extension or request extended time because I met my hours and they're like, okay, well, you now need to get licensed, but I wasn't ready. And then when I had to take the test, I don't remember the specifics, but there was something I missed in the directions. And that's such a common ADHD experience of reading directions or just not fully comprehending what you're reading and then making mistakes and missing bits and pieces of it or misinterpreting just because our working memory can't hold on to all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, the ADHD tax.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are some things that while you were chatting earlier that reminded me of childhood things that I'm like, oh right, this was a clue. This was a clue. So I used to line up my stuffed animals. I'd line them up the same way every night on the bed. Or rather, in the morning, I would line them up in the same way. And then before I went to bed, I'd have to take them off, put them on the floor, line them up in the same way. When I played Barbies, I would just enjoy decorating the house and making the space all cozy. But I didn't really want to do the social play of Barbies. Even when I play with children now and I'm playing Barbies, I'm like, this is boring. I just want to make the house look cute and cozy. Yeah, very black and white thinking, taking things literally, having a hard time not understanding when people were being sarcastic. I'm trying to think. I also made compulsive lists, coordination issues. One of my family members, friends who I was around frequently at a certain period in their life would call me fumble fingers because I would just drop things all the time. I still do. But I would just bump into things all the time. I had a partner in college be like, you're so coordinated on the lacrosse field. But it doesn't make any sense because in real life, you are not coordinated at all. And I'm like, I don't get it, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to procrastinate all my assignments in high school and college and grad school till the very last minute. And then I'd be so stressed. But I would also just like hate studying for things where you had to like remember or like just tasks that took a long time. I just wouldn't do, or I'd put off until the very last minute. And I just remember being so stressed all the time. And we know that like ADHDers thrive on that adrenaline. We need that adrenaline to help us get the thing done.
Right.
Because if it's like 3 weeks away, well, I'm not starting on that. That's 3 weeks away.
And some of the things that you experienced, I didn't, which really made me question because I tend to be pretty coordinated. And I suspect because my family has immigrants that English was very important. And so English and language were very, very important in my entire family. And my processing, it's slowed down a lot now, but my processing tends to be pretty quick with language and sarcasm. So I didn't see those things come up. So when I would look at traits of autism, I thought, well, it can't be because I didn't struggle with those things. But seeing how it can show up differently. And of course, in this moment, I can't think of anything. The pretend play, same. When I had kids, I abhorred the pretend play. That just wasn't fun. But we did a lot of singing and we'd watch shows where we could do actions to things. And I think things that are rote, I really enjoy.
Yeah. And to be clear, like as I got older, I understand sarcasm. I have to cognitively sometimes think about like, okay, what's the context here? They're probably being sarcastic, but like intuitively, I didn't always pick up on that. But that's interesting you say that like that you think because of your family's like immigration story and that the importance that was placed on English, that wasn't a concern for you. Because I think that is true. Like I think some autistic people, especially AFAB, don't have the same challenges with socializing that, right, we might classically think of. I think there's so much variation in how autism can present. Yeah.
Yeah. In high school for geography, I went on the show Win, Lose or Draw in the 80s, and I got a D in geography. And my boss at the time printed me out a map of the United States because I wouldn't know where states were and I wanted to be prepared in case anything geographic showed up. I had the same teacher for minority history and for women's studies, got an A in women's studies and a D in minority history because my special interest, my driving special interest is people and relationships and probably language. And if it doesn't have to do with those things, I check out. I have absolute sports also, just totally check out, no interest. But if there's a human element that's brought in, and my husband and I, when we watch shows, I'm starting to enjoy shows that have adventure, but there needs to be an element of relationship in that. And we watched a show, and after a while, I said, this is like 80% action and maybe 20% relationship. And it's just gratuitous action, which doesn't do a thing for me.
Yeah. And I think, right, for so many of us that are AFAB or even that are genderqueer, right, people can become our special interests. And so I think because we have to learn how to study people in a sense. Yeah. I also hated history. I'm like, this is so tedious. Like, I'm not going to remember this date. Why do I need to remember these things that happened in the past? Like, it didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. I'm looking at time. We did not talk about OCD. Can we do just a quick talk about what our OCD looks like and then maybe wrap up? Because I don't want to have too long of an episode. What do you think?
I feel like I could go, I don't know. I feel like OCD could be a whole other episode.
Well, can we at least say that I think it's the same as autism, that OCD doesn't necessarily mean that you compulsively wash your hands and check lights. And in the same way, when I look at the criteria for autism or ADHD, I don't see myself because the lived experience is so different. And when my therapist, she's my coach actually, suggested that I might have OCD, which I do, I was very surprised. And I even talked to you and made a comment about, well, it's not that bad, or I don't have, you're much better at language than I am. But I said something, you're like, well, that is part of the obsession. I'm like, whoop. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the reason I say like another episode is because I don't know that I could talk about it in a condensed way.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd want to info dump about the different ways in which it can show up and my presentation and how it's morphed over the time. And so I'll just, maybe say I have OCD. I have a few different themes of OCD, which is not diagnostic. It's just kind of like a way to think about how it can show up, different ways it can present. But yeah, I mean, I think I've had it since I was a child. I think part of the lining up, right? I think there was an element of anxiety there. Like it was soothing, and also like I would be afraid something bad would happen if I didn't line things up, or if I didn't turn off all the lights, I was afraid the house would burn down, right? Like, or like my family would die. That doesn't make sense, right? Like if I don't do this one action, I'm going to kill my family. Like cognitively, those things don't make sense unless the action is like stabbing them. But that wasn't the thoughts I was having as a kid. But I guess just to kind of like sum it up there.
Yeah. And mine, I learned about mine because it was showing up in a relationship, a very close friendship. And I have so much empathy for people that are in a relationship with somebody with OCD. I've been married, it'll be 28 years next month. And bless my husband, it comes out differently with him. And there's some other dynamics at play. But that's where it comes out. That's how I learned I am OCD. But definitely had that need for order and structure and things to be a certain way. And learning that I can let that go. Yeah.
You're like, I can let that go. Yeah. Like you're just kind of affirming it for yourself in that moment too.
Yeah. COVID definitely increased my sense of contamination, OCD. I was already, I would say, a germaphobe, but that certainly didn't help. So I've had to navigate a lot with that. Yeah. So if people want to find you and learn more about you, where can they go?
thedivergentgrovetherapy.com.
And if you have any questions or comments for us, you can reach out to us at unapologetically ADHD, AUDHD @gmail.com.
And where can folks find you?
You can find me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. And I also have a podcast by the same name, Unapologetically Sensitive. Thank you so much for being with us here today, listeners. Thank you, Alex. This has been a great conversation, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you, Alex. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us in this space where your too muchness is never too much. Remember, you're not broken, and you're definitely not alone. We're here to honor the complexity, celebrate the nuance, and walk this neurodivergent path together.
You might consider giving us a rating and a review on the platform you listen to podcasts. It gives others an opportunity to see our podcast and walk this path with us. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind to your nervous system, and stay unapologetically ADHD. You belong here.